Good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Kevin Jeffers. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Kathy. Good morning.
Yeah, I haven't seen you in about a year.
Oh, I've been busy writing books.
I know. And it's amazing. So we'll get to talk all about that. But why don't we set the stage right now, if you would, to explain your journey with your NDE to get started, how all of your superpowers came into play before we talk about your new book. Okay?
Sure. Well, the NDE was a very personal experience. But what did happen is that when I went into the tunnel, the traditional white tunnel, I experienced many things about what I saw. I saw entities. I saw what I considered ghosts at that point in my life. And I went into the light. And interestingly enough, I wasn't accepted into the light. I was actually pushed back into my body. And I was somewhat disappointed because the light at that point of entry is beautiful. Just is beyond description. The colors, the spirits that you see, just the vividness of the experience. So I came back to the body and I was very disappointed because I went through this almost death experience on my own volition. It was not an accident. It wasn't some extraordinary event. It was self-perpetuated. And then I came back and I tried to reconcile the experience of moving to the light with what I had already experienced previously in meditations and healings and the things that I've been doing for a very long time. And what was interesting was an expansion of my vision of the possibilities of spirit. I saw through that experience that I was much more than I thought I was, much more than I had experienced previously. And it was more of a reconciliation of who I thought I was and who I actually am. And I noticed an enhancement of my healing skills and also what I would call seeing things that I had not been able to see before.
Okay, so I want to ask then about your first book, which I think you have a copy of it handy. Did you say you have it?
I do.
Oh, good. Okay. So if we could show them that so that you can help people. I found the first book. I couldn't find my copy. I hope I didn't give it to somebody. But fascinating, explaining the different levels of consciousness and where you went into the void. But how do you see our journey here within the pattern?
Well, when I experienced the pattern, I experienced what I would call the totality of all, which took me a very long time to reconcile. And where we are as consciousness, as spirits with a soul, is a progression of experiences that lead us back into the light. Trying not to generalize it too much, I would say that as you go through your life and you learn about yourself, you learn who you are, it's less about what you can do as opposed to how you process the experience of the light, of spirit, of life. The moving into my personal time moving into the pattern actually left me speechless. Mm-hmm. I could not articulate the experience for months and months and months. And finally, I reached a point where I realized that I had to open up and grab that experience and recreate it for myself to be able to talk to other people about it.
Mm-hmm.
So up to that time, it was a very personal thing. It was not meant to be discussed. It was not meant to be written about. Um, but I moved through that to an understanding, or actually a realization, that I should talk about these things. And the result was the book that I just showed you, which began at the beginning of my experiences when I was 17 up until currently. And it's definitely an evolution of capabilities of experiencing spirit.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, the benefit, I think, of that book and of so much of the near-death experience work is that any of us that have had experiences, whether it's been spiritually transformative experiences or near-death experiences, have feelings, but they don't, it doesn't translate to words necessarily. And so that's why I am so appreciative, because I even though I do communications for a living, I have trouble articulating what I see, what I know, and that sense of it that you just know. I mean, there's no questioning about it. It's just a fact, and that doesn't happen much in 3D.
I would say that for me, the near death experience is a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a game changer for everyone who's ever had the experience, whether they're able to articulate it or not, whether they remember all of it or remember in part. But we come back with a responsibility of communicating in that extraordinary event. And generally, people that I've talked to, and I've talked to quite a few people that have had an NDE, near death experience, is that they come back changed. And the change could be very strong and change could be very subtle. But it's like a shifting of your understanding of life, a shifting of consciousness from the mundane, everything that you've been doing day in and day out, to something extraordinary, which is that you can now appreciate and experience spirit in a way that you never did before.
Right, right, right. And you see the beauty of that rather than the contrast or judgment of that with others. Without it, you're navigating this world in protection mode. And once you have that experience, I had a spiritually transformative experience 20 years ago that I wake up every morning still remembering vividly. And after probably 2 days or a day or and a half after I had that experience, I had to go to the airport. And it's almost like you're walking on air. It's like, oh, this body, okay, this worked this time. And it's such a different belief system about how the world works.
Well, I
And
would like to take it a little bit beyond belief system.
okay,
Talk
good.
about that for a minute. When you experience the light, when you experience yourself, you move out of belief systems. You move out of your preconceptions and your visualizations of who you are and what your life should be, because you simply see yourself as you are. The radiance of spirit is available to you at that point because you walked into the light in spirit. You didn't walk into your body or the flesh. It's not like sitting in a chair and meditating, of which I do almost daily. It moves way beyond the physicality of the meditation into the actuality of light, the transcending consciousness of light. There's a lot of talk these days, I notice, about quantum energy, quantum entanglement. And I think that has a lot to do with the new death experience or the near death experience, because you are actually located in multiple points of consciousness simultaneously.
Perfect.
In quantum entanglement, you are everywhere and you are where you are. And that for me is like the near death experience. You are everywhere and you are where you are. You're conscious of all that you are. And then you bring that back to your life here on the planet, and it doesn't make any sense.
I'm
Because
sorry.
no, that's fine. The social construct that we operate under is a set beliefs.
Mhm.
The beliefs that we've learned from our parents, from our friends, from our religious training, education. We build our life based upon what we've been taught. We don't build our life on what we've experienced. And the near-death experience pushes us past our beliefs into a higher reality of the potential of consciousness.
Yes.
One of the things that I encountered after that experience was moving through what you would call the spiritual realm. And in the spiritual realm, that particular realm that is closest to the planet, to the earth, I call it the earth energy system, are people, souls who have died in a manner that has not allowed them to adjust to the actuality of their death. They experience something, and being unable to move into the light, they become stuck. I call stuck here in the spiritual realm, in the planetary energy field. And when they become stuck, they don't know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuckness, or the it's kind of like an adhesion to the planet, but they don't have a body anymore, but they experience the physical life through the I would say eyes of others. And the people that have been unable to make that transition into the light, many of them are good people. You go to an old folks home and you see people that are dying under medications, under painkillers. They simply don't understand where they are, who they are. It also happens in violent death. It happens with children who have had no training or no guidance in a religious framework. You cannot go into the light unless you are guided into the light. And usually on death, we are guided into the light by family members or people that we love, or people that we're connected to. But in the case of violent death, in the case of death by medications, in the event of death by deterioration of our cognitive experiences, we don't know who we are. We don't know where to go. And hence, how can we go into the light without a path? Unless we're retrieved, in a sense, that's a good word, retrieved by someone who we're connected to or cares for us and pulls us into the light. Perfect. You know, it's logical that if you don't know where to go, how can you go there?
Well, that's a great segue to your next book, but I want people to understand that this opportunity to have a more expansive view of your existence here and to have access to more information than what seems apparent in this little box that we're in 3D is available without a near death, without hurting your body and having to have injuries the rest of your life. You can have that. And part of that, Kevin, I think you, after you had your near-death experience, you must have discovered the Monroe Institute audios, because in your new book, you talk about the Gateway Experience Journey CDs. Is that how you were able to re-experience where you were?
No.
Oh.
Listening to the audio tapes that have been put out by the Monroe Institute helped me formalize my understanding of what I was experiencing.
Oh, okay.
It's like when you can go anywhere you want to go on the thought of going there, where do you go? And how do you know to go there?
Right.
What I have found in the Monroe tapes, the Monroe Institute tapes, is that there is a progression of experiences from the physical earth into the light. It's like steps up a stairs, and you got to have the first step, second step, third step, and they're binaural, what they call binaural beats. The binaural audio facilitates the expansion of consciousness. I found it to be helpful.
Right. But I use them every day for concentration.
Mm-hmm.
I use some version of that, whether it's the Monroe work. I found that when I was working with Arthur Anderson and you were out in a room and you had to focus on your laptop. The only way I could drill in was to use those, and they work incredibly well. But I wondered if you had a longing, because I want to talk about your shamanic training a little bit, about your journey to not only having the expanded view, but then learning how to use it to assist others. Did you have a shaman that trained you?
Not exactly.
Okay.
When I was 18, a woman who said she was a psychic, and when I was 18 was a really long time ago. Psychics were the word for a representative, a spiritualist.
Mhm.
Really did some adjustments in my energy field that allowed me to stabilize who I am. And when I experienced what I experienced, through the first experiences were in hypnotic regression. And that was interesting because at that point also in my life, no one knew what a hypnotic regression was.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a handful of people in the area that I lived that were exploring this. And that's when I truly left my body. And it wasn't, I had never had an out of body experience. I'd have an expanded consciousness, expanded experience of consciousness. And I've had that since I was a child. But here was a time where I actually physically left my body, and it was just an extraordinary experience. And then I immediately went into a past life.
Oh.
And that was, in a sense, shocking. Lifting up from the body, going through the various levels of the house, out through the roof, and then zipping over to a previous life. It was all extraordinary.
That's beautiful. So, so that you had that quite a long time ago. So, have you been using that knowledge to build on all along and to integrate information? Okay.
Absolutely, absolutely. Somewhere around that time, I started the road of becoming a healer, an energetic healer. At that point, Reiki wasn't really, no one knew what Reiki was. And I was a spiritual healer because of my beliefs in spirit and my practical relationship with spirit. And that expanded. And that, in conjunction with a greater view of things that are possible, enhanced the healing experience. I've become a very proficient healer. So it's not like a piece of something, it's a whole of something, and the whole of something is composed of all the pieces, and all the pieces are who I am.
Perfect.
So
Perfect. And so are the others. That's
yes.
what, when you do a healing, I noticed it was multi-dimensional. It was not just this timeline. It was multiple timelines.
Well, that's the extraordinary part, because I didn't even know that was going on.
I did.
Yes, that's the feedback I received from people in the latest series of healings I've been doing, is that they are here and there and somewhere. And then now I see people as energy. I see them as light. And it's like pushing their consciousness from where they're locked into to where they are in a greater view of their potentiality as a soul.
Perfect. Perfect.
Everything that I've been doing has been increasing and expanding gradually over a very long period of time. There's nothing that was earth-shaking except the experience of the pattern. It's all evolutionary. It's
Right.
a developmental piece by piece that came through by actually doing it. I know that if I had not done these things, I would not have been able to enter into these new spaces of consciousness.
So when you're talking about helping others, are you helping them see who they really are, their more expanded view of themselves, in order to hold it? So it's an empowerment, not a tune-up.
Well, I would in a sense be reluctant to say this, but I don't think of them. I think of me. I know there's an objective. I know there's a goal. There's a healing that needs to be happening, but I'm always very attuned to what's occurring in me, and particularly in the context of energy flow, because I find that by stimulating an energy center in the person I'm working with, they experience a greater reality. They experience healing because they've walked into the healing session prepared to be healed.
Right.
If you're not ready to heal, you don't want to be healed, and you're in that room because you have a couple extra bucks in your pocket, or your buddy said, hey, go on, go get healed, or, you've got nothing else to do, go do that thing. The level of expectation is very low. When you go into the healing environment with an expectation of something will happen, something will occur, you will be healed to some degree, it's more likely you will be.
Right.
Because you're acting in partnership with the healer. You're not just a body laying on a table waiting to get something to get done to them. You are cooperating. You're working with the healer to, in a sense, not only heal yourself, but be more sensitive to the energy that is you.
Well, aren't you're creating, out of a dissonance, you're creating a more smooth energy wave, so that their body, a field where their body can heal.
Well, I couldn't claim to create.
Oh.
I still have the school of thinking and practicality that I become a vehicle to be used by spirit for the healing event.
Okay.
Because frankly, I don't know how to heal anybody. I don't. I'm going to kind of get a bigger sense now that I have done it for so many years. I'm not a doctor. I don't know about this or know this about that. I know where the energy demands to go in that person, whether it's their body, whether it's their astral body, whether it's their higher self. The energy that I work with knows where to go and knows how to do what it needs to do. And then sometimes that entails expanding your consciousness.
I see.
So you experience a multidimensionality, not because of I'm doing that to you, but you've always had that possibility. And by embracing the possibility, you experience the experience.
That makes sense. Well, they're in your field, so there's coherence with your field.
Once again, it's just being a channel of energy. That's what I call it. I won't, people want to say you did this and you did this and you did that. I said, I did nothing. Sometimes I'm even clueless. So I show up when I give you an example. There was a person whose mother called me up and said, my son was in an accident and he's in the hospital and he's not doing well and he's got a broken back. And I said, I don't think I can do anything. You're talking about healing bones. And if you reach over and knock on the wall or your desk or whatever, that's solid. That's real. How can that be fixed when it's broken? So I sat down in a chair out of obligation or responsibility to a friend, and I was pulled out of my body. I didn't go there. I didn't take one of the Monroe tapes and accelerate my frequency and my ability to travel. I was yanked out of my body. immediately into the room where that person was. And then I could see through the eyes of spirit, which is an extraordinary event, what was wrong, what was happening, what bones were broken. And then in cooperation with the energy made available by this higher degree of consciousness, a healing did take place.
Wow.
And I wouldn't talk about that one either, because this stuff just seems kind of like Twilight Zone, crazy stuff. How can you, yeah, I mean, how can this happen? But then I went to talk with a woman who had been involved for 40, 50 years in this business, in this work, I should say work. And I said, and I explained the whole situation. She said to me, so what?
Wow.
She said, that's just what people do, what people can do. And you did it, you experienced it. And I said, what I noticed about this thing is that everything has changed for me. And nothing has changed.
Beautiful.
I still get up in the morning, do my exercises, eat my breakfast, occasionally come to work when I need to do some work. And then I'm back into that space periodically throughout the day. But it's the same as it always was. It's nothing extraordinary. But everything has changed. The context, the view, the experience of life has changed. Because now I see that the impact that people have on each other is extraordinary.
Right. Right.
And often we don't even know it. We're not sensitized to it. Have you ever been met someone and literally had your life changed? That's a common experience.
Right. Right.
But there was an energetic reaction that was occurring on a level that you didn't understand or fully experience, but it still occurred. And
Right.
then you walk away from that event and you say, oh, that person was interesting. I feel a little changed, but some extraordinary things were occurring on an energetic level that you were not sensitized to because you didn't believe it was possible.
Well, or if someone's still in your field afterwards, do you as soon as you're done with a session with somebody, do you click out of that space and because when I work with people, I open up the Akashic records, the galactic Akashic records, but I don't use that to work. I just use that space that I make sure that I'm there. It's my training wheels kind of thing. But I have to close it after a while.
Well, this is the part of the work I don't particularly like.
Oh, okay.
I can't close it.
Oh, wow.
So if it's like putting your finger up and, putting it in the breeze and see where the breeze is blowing, I can find that person.
Wow, forever?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
I tell you, it's an extraordinarily annoying experience.
Wow.
It's like dialing in and hitting the telephone book, and you find that person, and then you know who they are, and you know what's going on, you know what you know. So I have never been able to sever myself after that experience.
Wow. Okay, so I want to go. If you're okay with it, I've got your website queued up, and
Sure.
I want to start talking about. Okay, so you can hear from Kevin that he is able to integrate 3D life and this multi-dimensional aspect of his consciousness and be highly functioning in 3D. And that's part of what I was hoping that would communicate here for people that are afraid of opening up to a bigger reality and expanding using maybe what they might call their intuition or their insights, being in the flow, whatever you want to call it. But that is our divine right to know and be expanded beings that way and use it here, right?
Yeah, well, being afraid is a natural part of the process. It's like, what do we do when we go into a dark room? We really don't want to go into a dark room. If you've ever entered into a room and it's empty and it's dark, you just feel very concerned and very worried about encountering some form of danger or something that you haven't encountered before. So what do? You turn on a light. The spiritual experience is us turning on our lights, so that as we move through the dark, we know where we're going. But the first steps are one of fear, because we don't see what's in that room.
Oh, that's perfect. That's like, was it Pluto? Who was it? Plato's cave, where he talks about the shadows and they were afraid to get out of the cave into the light. It's been the human condition.
Shadows are creepy. They're signals to danger. But when you know the shadow and you're a friend with the shadow and the shadow's been your buddy for 30, 40 years, you just tend to be less afraid. But it's an acceptance of a situation where you're not so much in control, but you know what's happening. And you don't know what's happening until you turn on the light. And the light is here.
Perfect. Okay, so I have one more question for you, and then I want to show your website. Most shamans that I've worked with, and I think a lot of your work is shamanic-like, are kind of abrupt. They they don't have bedside manner. Usually, they get in your face because they want you to change, but it's not that comfortable. But somehow you've figured out a way to not do that. How did you figure that out?
Because I don't care.
Oh, interesting.
When you care, you add all kinds of energy and spin, emotional spin, to what the person you're talking to or what you're doing. When you don't care, because you know in the totality of their spirit that this is just an expression of consciousness at this point in time, you don't care.
Wow.
Because you know people are integrated into the totality of all that is, they're going to be okay. And from the spiritual point of view, you don't die. Your body might die. You come back. If you're crazy, you come back. But you don't die. So now you're talking to a person, you're looking in their eye, you see their energy, and you don't care because you know they're okay.
Perfect.
And okay is relative. Someone who is going through a disease and listens to this podcast said, "Oh my God, I have cancer. How can I not care? How can you not care? Because I'm dying." And my thought is, this is the moment that you chose to die. This is the moment where you chose to increase your experience of a greater reality and go back into the light and experience who you are. That's a joyful thing.
Right.
Because this life that we all have is crazy and is demeaning. We live in a survivalist world. We're constantly at risk. We become attached to it. We become attached to our friends, to our family, because we find comfort in their love or their care, or we find comfort that we just know who they are. But that's not who they are. Who they are is the consciousness, the form of consciousness, the integrated form of consciousness that decided to take on a physical body to experience this reality, to learn how to go into the light. And we do it by choice. No one is here. No one was made to come here. We all, at the moment of decision, chose to come into the physical world and experience what we chose to experience, whether it's a man or a woman, whether it's a child or an adult, whether it's poor or rich. We choose our reality. We choose what to experience with one point, and that is moving fully integrated into the light. Mm-hmm. And that's a very painful process. Mm-hmm. Everyone who hears us knows darn well that being alive is a painful process.
Right, right, right.
Anyone who says it's great is crazy. Well, excuse me for being blunt, but you were just saying,
That's great. Well, so I'm getting stuff from Zach Bergen, who I adore. He's very brilliant. He says, "Yeah, stuff that Kevin is saying tracks 100% with my knowledge and experience." Thanks, Zach.
well, then Zach is probably very familiar with pain and suffering.
Yeah, he said, I've met just outside the stratosphere with a group of star seeds for astral projection practice. We'd use our mind motive force to project to areas within the local systems. No past life stuff except for being in the realm where awareness is total, which would include the time illusion of past lives. Cheers. Thanks, Zach.
Hey, Zach, when you get a chance, stop by and say, hey.
Yeah, I'll be glad to introduce you.
I mean in the other side.
Oh, that's what I mean. But you could meet here and then make a plan. So anyway, what we're next I wanted to talk about. So your first book is called The Pattern, and you somehow had enough. We'll meet not on Earth. LOL is what he said. Yeah. Okay. So thanks, Zach. What I wanted to let people know is that you're again able to help people in a real way with the navigation of this reality and a bigger reality, correct?
Yes. When requested and when approved by their higher self.
Okay, perfect.
But not a moment before.
I understand. Okay, so now I'm going to go to your website and show, because this way we can show your new book as well and make sure it's up. Okay, so I'm going to scroll for you so you can tell me how to navigate this the best if you'd like, okay?
Sure.
Okay, so here we go.
Now, these are posts that we put on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
I've been posting for a few years now, and I work in conjunction with an artist who is able to articulate what I've seen and experienced. I'm also an artist by training.
Right.
Actually a sculptor. I'm not a graphic artist. So we put our heads together and I give them an idea how to express what the post says. And the post is derived directly from my experience in spirit.
Perfect. And these are beautiful. And then there's a video from you. And then here's a wonderful picture of the pattern.
Well, that's actually one of my first pictures. Because I tried to explain to the artist, what is the pattern? And it was very confusing for that person because they didn't have that kind of relationship with energy. And I said, visualize you as the totality in the center of a grid of light, but the intersecting points of light are like a holographic image. So this was the first effort, his first efforts to articulate the pattern.
Okay. Oops, the next picture's not showing up. Here we go. But here is your book, The Pattern, and then your new book. And that's what I'm really excited to talk about, your new book. I got to read quite a bit of it, and it's amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I got the Kindle because I didn't have enough time to get the hardback. But
well, let me talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
The Soul Retrieval was the result of 3 years of intensive meditation and experiencing of the process of retrieving souls and guiding them back to the light. 3 years. This was every night for 3 years. No vacation. Because I felt that compulsion. And it's interesting, when you become attuned to spirit, you feel compulsions to do things. And my compulsion was to talk about going out into that realm, that energetic realm around the earth, and seeing these, what I call lost souls, because they don't know where they're going, and guiding them back into the light. And that's where the two hands are touching. That's my experience of the touching of a soul helps center them to return to the light. And the meditation was, I simply was curious, what's on the other side? What's going on? Why is it this way? And then I began to learn that the reality that we have here on this planet is just one aspect of the greater reality of who we are on the other side. There's an expression that I just adore, and it said, as above, so below. But that's also a negative implication, because what's here now is not very good. But it's an articulation of the experience of spirituality, which on the other side is very organized. Because we're living in a universe of higher forms of consciousness.
Right.
And the book, The Pattern on the Left Side, is, I think it's a closer articulation of my actual experience of the pattern, which is that in the Milky Way, which is a construct of a grid, which I call the pattern, you call it anything you want, I couldn't think of any other words, so I call the pattern, is a patterning of consciousness that helps us move through our life. Have you ever noticed that when you need help, there's help?
Yep.
When you need understanding, there's understanding. When you're stuck and you are truly attuned to spirit, you will get an answer. That's what I call the pattern. The pattern is designed to pull us through a higher degree of consciousness. The book on the right is really just the activity of soul retrieval.
Oh, and let's talk about some of those. I don't know how to make this bigger, so I'm going to close it down for a second. Unless, is there something else you'd like me to show on this website before I?
No, that's fine. We haven't updated the right side picture to the actual book cover.
I don't have a copy of it here, so.
Yeah, it's fresh off the press. I don't have a copy either.
Well, okay, so I want people to understand the book, the new book, the Soul Retrieval book. You will not be able to put it down. So you better plan on, if you start reading it, that it's not 2:00 in the morning, that it's not you wake up and you want to read so you go back to sleep. That's not the kind of book. It's more like, wow. So in the first couple of retrievals, you did your mother first, then you did your father, who you had a rough experience with, but that cleared it up. Do you want to talk about either one of those where you're I don't know if you've lost any.
I can talk about both. I'm fine.
Okay.
The retrieval of my mother was that after her death, and she died a very bad death, she was unable to breathe, and they had her on morphine as pain relief and also to reduce anxiety of not being able to breathe. So essentially, when she died, she was a drug addict. And I was very concerned about that, because people that transition into spirit in that condition usually have a very hard time finding out who they are, just rediscovering who they are, and having a full experience of spirit. So I was very concerned about her. After a while, you'd have to give souls a time to collect themselves and rest after their death. I went looking for her, and I couldn't find her. And then she showed up in a meditation and said, well, look over here. And then she pointed to an energy location. And I said, okay, well, tomorrow when I go into the meditative state, I'll look for that energy connection. And I did, and I connected with her and found her. And it was fascinating, because I saw a house that only had a kitchen. And my mother was cooking. And she loved to cook. She's Italian. She would cook pastas, lasagnas, all kinds of spaghettis, all kinds of great tasting food. And I went into the kitchen, like when I was growing up, and we were chatting. And I said, do you want to go into the light? And she said, well, maybe later. I'm busy cooking. And I said, okay. But what I noticed is that when she completed a dish, she would turn her head back to the stove, and then she would look back and it was gone. And she said, oh, we need some more pasta. This would go back and forth and back and forth. So it was a perpetual process of doing that which she loved to do. And I think that is a form of heaven.
Oh.
Going to the place where you love doing what you want to do. And I said, well, Mom, maybe there's a little bit more to this whole thing. And her sister showed up. And then her mother showed up. And then she brightened up. She stopped thinking about cooking food and doing these things. And they moved her into the light. So at that point, I felt complete in my obligation to my mother.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Now, the retrieval of my father is I didn't know where the heck he was. We had a very rocky relationship, as you noted. And he, when he died, he had a stroke, and he actually took about a year to die. He left, he was not in his head. People that die after a stroke are generally not coherent. And eventually I found him. No one is really lost. And he was in a church. He's Catholic, Irish Catholic. He was in a church, and he was dressed as a priest, and he was sweeping the floor. And he would sweep from the entry point to the altar, clean it all up, and then he would turn around and it was all dirty again. And he'd say, oh, I really have to sweep the floor. Then he would go back and he would start all over, back and forth, back and forth. He was doing the thing that he loved to do, which was to care for the church. And I knew that in a past life he'd been a priest. So he was just going back to where he was happy and comfortable. But he didn't want to go into the light because as far as he was concerned, he was in the light. Sweeping the church was heaven.
Oh, wow.
So in this case, no one called out to him, and he really didn't want to go because he was doing what he wanted to do. And I said goodbye. So now I know where he is, and I have no plans to go back again and try to retrieve him into the light because he's doing what he wants to do. And he's very clear about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So the other one I wanted to ask your insights on was the one that the retrieval that you did, and I don't know what the date was, but it was kind of demon lizard like, and it turned into a baby. Can you talk about that one?
I'm trying to remember that one.
Oh, well, it sounds like in the ones I was reading that were darker, you called in a team. You called in your team to help you. Do you want to mention a little bit about that, and maybe that'll help trigger?
I think I'm blanking that one out. I don't think I particularly like that one.
It like blew my circuits. What I remembered was that you had to help this being that was not sort of grunted, yes, I'm ready to go, but it was kind of a terrifying looking lizardy kind of being. And then when you brought it to the light, it turned into a little baby.
Well, that was symbolic of this restart of that form of consciousness. But I don't want to open a whole book up. I'll just open a couple pages up here. Not of that experience particularly. Okay. There are other forms of consciousness that take on human bodies.
Right. Right.
Non-human intelligences. And a lizard is a fairly common form of consciousness outside of the earth plane that has their own reality, that has their own society, and they come to earth to learn new things.
Okay.
And the integration of the, quote, non-human intelligence, some people call them aliens, is a bumpy ride because they don't have a cultural context to the human experience. And they come here to learn something, and often they fail. The whole thing goes bad. So as I'm recalling that experience, the moving into the light and the transformation into a baby was a restart for that particular form of for that particular soul.
So, okay, so I have a next question. How did you remember in such incredible detail each one of these? Did you right away after it happened record it on your phone? Or, I mean, because it's fabulous, you guys. Wait till you read this book. It's really cool. How did you remember in detail what went on?
I became really good at writing stories on my telephone.
I bet.
But there was also an emotional impact for each of these experiences. It's not like they just evaporated into nothing after the experience. I found that writing them down as soon as possible, as soon as I returned from the meditation, was helpful because I would remember a lot of the details. If I didn't do that, it never really got fuzzy, but it lost that sparkling quality of being real, of you being able to experience it. So probably 4 a.m, I'm sitting there on my stupid phone and typing away, and once I typed it, then it stuck.
Yeah. I wondered if you spoke it because it's that clear. It's beautifully done, you guys. You're gonna love this book.
But Kathy, the point that I wrote it down, it all just seemed natural. It wasn't weird. It wasn't this. It wasn't that. It was just simply, well, that's what I experienced, and I wrote it down. And then in hindsight, when I was preparing the book and pulling out this journaling, they did sound a little weird. But that was like years and years ago. But they still had a sparkle about them. For some reason, working in spirit, what you do has a sparkle about it. You really don't forget it.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
if you go to sleep and you have a really cool dream and you wake up and you can't remember it, I would generally say, well, that's probably not a real experience so much as it is just a remembrance.
Perfect. Okay, so now we want to segue into your participation with IANDS. And I met you last year at the IANDS conference. And you're are you a speaker or on the panel? What are you doing this year in Phoenix?
Well, I have an hour to talk about something, which probably is closer to the Soul Retrieval and the application of the experience of the near-death experience into a practical skill or tool. So I talk to folks that have gone through the near-death experience and they're in shock from it. And I say, look at literally, you came back changed.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I know that you came back changed. And we would talk about that. Because it was a positive experience, even though it might have been a little weird and creepy. It's still a good experience. It's still a positive experience. And so in IANDS, gave a lecture last year, and I was a healer for, I think it was 5 days, mm-hmm. Lost track. And my book had been published. So it was really just about, I went there for the healing. I didn't go there to promote a book, and I didn't go there for the speech. I went there because I committed myself to be available for healing of people that I had enormous respect for because they were attuned to what I was attuned to. Mm-hmm. And I generally don't do that. I don't want to be the healer on display. I just wanted to, but in this case, I wanted to be available to IANDS because my perception is the people that go there are generally very committed to spirit in some way.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I would say is that they've experienced the same pattern or field of reality, and they're doing their best to remember and utilize it in this reality. And
that should be honored. I think that should be honored.
Yes. Yes.
Because the majority of the people you meet don't really care about that. But then you go to this conference where people have either had a near-death experience or fascinated by a near-death experience. They are demonstrating a commitment to spirit that I think I have to honor.
Right, right. So what, as far as you speaking, are you excited to see people you met last year, or what is it about the conference? So other people that might want to watch it online, if they can't come in person to Phoenix, or there's tickets to buy it online as well as in person. And the website is conference.iands.org. Or if you go to the IANDS.org, there is a button to get to that one, but direct to it is conference.iands.org. And I, as a volunteer, I've been a volunteer for 7 years for IANDS, and I never hardly get to see any of the presentations. So I always try to get the recordings and forget Netflix, forget Gaia TV, forget all that stuff, and watch that while I'm eating dinner for the next months. Because the articulation and the heart space really is recorded. It really is palpable, just like doing healings over digital media. It works beautifully. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew that that's still open for them, but they still can come to Phoenix. It's easy access from all over the country.
Well, Kathy, there's an interesting mix of the scientific, the medical, and the spiritualist.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the eyes of people with a near-death experience, because they've gone out in the spirit, there's no difference between the scientist, the doctor, and the spiritualist.
Right.
It's just people that have articulated an interest in one particular area. So if you say, is near-death experience real? You're going to meet the scientist. Was I healed? You're going to meet the medical folks. You're going to meet the psychiatrists. You're going to meet the analysts, and then you're going to meet people that had the near-death experience.
Right.
It's a very rich environment for experiencing spirit.
It feels like family. I mean, there's so many people that year after year you may not see them, but you see them at this event, and it's like party time again. But it's quite amazing, the articulation of people's experience. It really does help others learn how to speak about their own multidimensional experiences and have the words to help others with it too. Because I think you feel very isolated originally trying to connect the dots or connect the pattern, if you want to use your analogy. So that's this seems to fortify your and expand your access by being
the most powerful part of this conference is the sharing room, where people have had a near-death experience, just talk about it. So I would recommend someone who's had a near-death experience and can't articulate it and doesn't have any basis of understanding of what occurred, go to the conference and go into these breakout rooms and meet 6, 7, 8 different people that have had this experience, and they're very bewildered. They're very excited, but it really opens up for the person who is new to the experience what they actually went through.
Beautiful. Yeah. And that's happening at the end of August and the first couple of days of September in Phoenix this year. So it's a 2024 IANDS conference, and Kevin's going to be, are you going to be a healer there too?
Yes, I'll be healing on my off days.
Oh.
I don't have any off days. The only thing that's different is that the lecture that I'm giving, or the talk I'm giving, is not even a lecture. I'm not lecturing. Sharing the experiences in the book is Friday at 2:30.
Oh, wonderful.
But I promise I'm going to show up, and I'm not going to have a script. I'm not going to have any details what I'm going to say. I will have a copy of my book, I hope. But what's going to be talked about is the experience of soul retrieval.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, thank you. And again, everyone, you want to go to Kevin's website. So Kevin, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you so that they can follow your adventures? Because I'm sure you got you've got more stuff going to come through.
We have a big presence on Facebook. We're posting weekly different experiences that I've had over the years, accompanied by that really the incredible artwork. And that would be you just go to Facebook and it's the pattern.
Perfect.
If you want the book, you go to Amazon and it's available on Amazon, the two books. And then the website is info at thepattern.pub, P-U-B.
PUB. Yes, that's the only website I know that is a .pub. So that's perfect. So everyone, please do yourself a favor and follow what Kevin's doing. Check out his other interviews on YouTube. I've interviewed him once before, and you'll get more details about that first book on that interview. But this is somebody that you'll see. This is just the beginning of what his capability to help and reach others is going to, you can see it's going to multiply. So thank you so much, Kevin. It's going to be wonderful to see what comes next. Thank you.
Be well, Kathy. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, dear.
All right. Bye-bye.